Welcome to Pod Me If You Can, I'm David Farrell. Today's film is The Boys Next Door. It stars Maxwell Caulfield, who was from Grease 2, and Charlie Sheen in the film he was in right before being in Ferris Bueller.
Pardon me if you can. Movie reviews.
First of all, sometimes with these obscure movies with famous stars in them, we find the DVDs give away way too much information. And this is definitely the case. The Boys Next Door, on the back of the DVD, it says the entire film's plot, play by play, up until the final scene, which is very disappointing and sometimes just the way these things are authored. So The Boys Next Door is directed by Penelope Spheris, who directed Wayne's World, and the film opens by introducing us to serial killers and their common traits. They're usually quiet, they confuse sex and aggression, they're usually outsiders, and we hear the voices from interviews and the serial killers themselves in this chilling opening. Seemingly normal people commit these crimes. We meet our two boys next door who seem like normal people. Roy, played by Maxwell Caulfield, and Beau, played by Charlie Sheen. It's the end of the school year and they're both awkward outsiders. They don't have a lot of friends, and the other students don't seem to like them. They're pranksters, and when we first meet them, they're outlining each other in chalk to create the illusion of a crime scene, which alludes nicely to what's ahead. So they don't get invited to a party, but they decide to crash it anyway, because that's just the kind of guys they are, classy. And they go and pee in the pool, and they pick fights, and Roy fights his violent urges, but Beau wants to get laid. That's his primary objective throughout this film. They fight with their happy graduating classmates, and they steal a dog called Bon Bon. They decide to take a road trip to LA with the dog, and when they get there, the first major scene with violence in it is where Roy loses his temper at a gas station and beats the attendant senseless. The escalation is really shocking to Beau, but he goes along with it anyway and sticks by his friend. There's a sequence where Roy tells Beau that he has stuff inside him, and he means these anger issues. He says that he wanted to kill that guy, and that's the way he feels all the time. They briefly have shown that Roy's father is an alcoholic, and that neither of the two boys has a loving, caring relationship with their parents, which goes some way to explain their anger issues. It's also possible that the character of Roy is gay, and he's not sure how to express himself, which makes him angry. He does pretend to be gay in one sequence in order to seduce a homosexual man back to his apartment. They meet him at a gay nightclub, and they go home with him, and Roy pretends to be gay, and when they're alone with the man, they wind up killing him. There might also be homosexual feelings towards Beau, because when Beau finally gets to have sex with a woman in the film, which is his goal, Roy interrupts them angrily and attacks her, leading to her death as well. There's also a cute girl that Beau meets in an arcade, and when they see her in the car with her boyfriend later on, they sort of skulk up to them in the car, and Roy, who seems to feel no empathy at all, shoots the boyfriend and then shoots the girl. Roy doesn't want anybody else to be happy because seemingly he can only find a bleak future for himself working at a factory or something like that. Also, the way that they've just finished high school, they sort of have the world as their oyster and they're finally breaking free of these chains, but it escalates way out of control. There are two police officers, played by Christopher McDonald and Hank Garrett, who track the boys' movements and eventually track them to an empty shopping mall for their final standoff. This is the kind of film that works really well as a character analysis. Roy veers from an angsty teen to a full-on homicidal maniac, and Maxwell Caulfield does a great job in his performance. He was probably coming off of the high of being in Grease 2, and he never quite had the career trajectory that maybe was expected of him, but it's a solid performance here and he does very well. Charlie Sheen shines as his friend Beau, helped by their on-screen chemistry, and the tense and violent scenes are shot really well by Penelope Spheris. There is a scene where Beau has the opportunity to commit murder and join his friend when they're in the gay man's apartment, and he chooses not to, basically stops himself, Ultimately, he's not a bad guy like Roy. There is a fairly haunting cautionary tale here about youth and raw emotion. This sort of starts with a boys will be boys feeling of roughhousing, but as the movie continues, we realize that just like the men in the opening titles of the film, though Roy seems normal, he too is a serial killer. There's something inside him, as he says. The soundtrack was great. It was a real rock and roll soundtrack with a kind of live fast, die young sort of feel to it. And understandably, this was a low-budget film, which really launches the director to bigger things. As I said, Wayne's World, and Charlie Sheen obviously became a star in his own right. You might compare this to Thelma and Louise, both of them being on the run and in a car. Thelma and Louise went on the run, though, because one of them was attacked, and these two are far more menacing outlaws. Both couples are best friends and have a sense of adventure, and they hate their old lives, but the boys next door here are like a ticking time bomb. I just want to give a quick spoiler warning. I do need to talk about the end of this film, so if you do want to check it out, you might be able to find it on YouTube. You can go ahead and watch it before seeing the end of this video. Ultimately, the end of the film is very sad. It takes place, as I said, in an empty shopping mall, and Charlie Sheen's character Beau is forced to shoot Roy, which makes him a murderer, which takes away his innocence that he had through the entire film. Also, now the only witness to the crime spree is dead, and so the police will probably put all the murders that Roy did onto Beau. It's sad too, because at the end, it's the end of their friendship. I mean, it's the end of Roy's life as well. And because they only really had each other, they basically shared a love of violence, and perhaps, though it's never clear, if Roy could have admitted he was gay, or in love with Beau, they might have had a very different experience in LA. If you want to imagine a better ending to this, you can imagine Charlie Sheen's character in Ferris Bueller is the character from this film continued into Ferris Bueller. So he's arrested by the police at the end of this film, and perhaps the next time you see him in Ferris Bueller, where he's handcuffed to the seat there for drugs, though his crimes have continued and he is a felon, you can imagine him hooking up with Ferris Bueller's sister, and a more of a happy ending that from this, though he never got laid, maybe he managed to meet a girl later and straighten up. Or you can imagine Charlie Sheen of today and draw your own conclusions. It's interesting to note that Nicolas Cage and Crispin Glover both tested for the lead roles of this film, though I kind of feel like Charlie Sheen and Maxwell Caulfield do a really good job here. It's a haunting DVD to watch if you can get your hands on it, or as I said, if you can watch it on YouTube. You can find more from us at this YouTube channel or at podmeifyoucan.com.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Check out our podcast at www.podmeifyoucan.com.